In this video, we'll be solving some absolute value equations. Here's an example of an equation that has some absolute value symbols in it. Our job is to solve for x. So what number, when you put it in here, will make this equation true? In order to solve absolute value equations, your first step is going to be to put it in what we call standard form for absolute value equations. And what that means is we want the absolute value symbol and everything inside of it to be on one side of the equal sign, and everything outside of the absolute value symbol to be on the other side of the equal sign. So for this problem, this -8 is where I'm going to start, or this -8. He is not inside the absolute value sign, so I really want him on the other side of the equal sign. And we move it just like you would solving regular old linear equations. Since it's a -8, we're going to add 8 to move it to the other side. -8 plus 8 will cancel out. So I'll still have the absolute value of x plus 4, but now it's going to be equal to 10. This right here is what we call the standard form for absolute value equations. Once we're here, we're going to think about what this means. We're saying the absolute value of something is going to equal 10. Well, remember, absolute value is the distance something is from 0. So if we do the absolute value of a number, we're always going to end up making it positive because distance is positive. If we know that the absolute value of something is going to equal 10, that tells me that whatever's in those absolute value symbols, in this case x plus 4, needs to be 10. But it also means that x plus 4 could also equal -10. Because remember, whatever we put in this spot right here for x, we're going to simplify this and then do the absolute value of it. So if it came out to -10 in here, we would then do the absolute value of that, which would get us back to regular 10. So once it's in standard form, you're going to write the absolute value equals your number, and the absolute value of whatever it was equals the negative of that number. Once we're here, we're going to solve this like old school linear equations. So to get x by itself, I would minus the 4 over to this side, because 4 minus 4 cancels out. And I'm going to get x equals 6. That is one of my answers. Over here, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to minus the 4 to the other side. These are going to cancel. We're going to get x equals, but in this case, -10 and -4 is -14. This answer also works in our equation. Now let's talk about why. If I put 6 back in here for x, we would get 6 plus 4, which is 10, and the absolute value of 10 is 10, so that checks. If I put -14 back in here for x, we would do -14 plus 4, which is -10, and the absolute value of -10 is also 10. Those answers both work for this equation. Let's take a look at example 2. Remember, the first thing we got to do is we've got to get this in standard form for absolute value equations, meaning whatever's in the absolute value has to be by itself on one side. Currently, we have a 4 over here that is not inside the absolute value, so we need to move that 4. Now this is 4 times that absolute value. So to move the 4, we're going to divide by 4, just like you would in a regular equation to move a 4. 4 divided by 4 is 1, so those are going to go away, and we'll be left with the absolute value of x minus 2. And on the other side, we're going to have -4. So that is your standard form that we need for absolute value equations. Now we go to solve this. But before you go to solve this, let's think about what we just wrote. The absolute value of something equals -4. Is that ever going to be true? Can you do the absolute value of something and get a negative number for the answer? I don't think so. So once you get it in standard form, you need to stop and think, is this something that's even possible? If in standard form you have the absolute value of something equals a negative number, that's not possible. And if it's not possible, it means there is no number for x that's ever going to make that true. So this is no solution. And that is our symbol that we use for no solution. Let's do one more. At first glance, you might be thinking, wait a minute, it's equal to a negative number. That means we can't do it. You can't make that decision until it's in standard form. And currently, this is not in standard form because here's my absolute value, and we've got a -5 and a 3 that are on the wrong side. We're going to move them first before we make any decisions about whether this is possible or not. So remember, in solving equations, we always want to use reverse order of operations. So first thing that's going to get moved is anything using add and subtract. So we're going to first move that 3 by subtracting 3 from both sides. They're going to cancel out and leave us with -5 times the absolute value of 2x minus 1. And on the other side, we're going to have -5. I'm still not in standard form yet because of that -5. It's being multiplied, so to move it, we would divide by -5. -5 over -5 is a 1, so that leaves me with just the absolute value of 2x minus 1. And on the other side, -5 divided by -5 is still a 1. And now we're in standard form. Once you're in standard form, you can make the decision if this is possible or not. The absolute value of something absolutely could be 1. So we've got more work to do. This is possible. We're going to break it up into our two equations. The absolute value of 2x minus 1 equals 1 means 2x minus 1 could be 1, but 2x minus 1 could also be -1. So those are our two new equations that we need to solve. So first up, on our first equation, I'm going to move that -1 by adding 1 to the other side as well. Those are going to cancel and leave us with 2x equals 2. To get x by itself, we need to divide by that 2, and that's going to leave me with x equals 1. There is one of the solutions. Let's do the other equation. Again, we're going to add the 1 to move it over to the other side. And we're going to get 2x equals 0. To get x by itself, we need to divide by that 2. And that will leave me with x equals 0 divided by 2, which is just 0. So for this equation, we could put in 1 for x, or we could put in 0 for x. Both of those will work.